Calvin T. Mann, leading Emmy, served over 20,000 youth through speaking, coaching, and mentoring. He has inspired us for years. Welcome to Emmy TV Podcast with your host, Calvin T. Mann, the Encourager.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It is February 21st, 2022. It's been a long day so far. Gotta go get in here with these mentees. Yesterday was dope, right? We started teaching them another language yesterday. Just incredible. So, how's everybody? I hope the world is out there listening. We have a special guest today. My friend I met through at least 3 QPR workshops. I'm almost sure. I've been trying to find the 4th one, but I think it's been 3 for sure. She's a supporter of Emmy, and she is an advocate in suicide prevention. And I often text her, talk to her, to see how and what we can do. So here is my friend, Sister Esha Price.
Much for having me, Calvin. That is an amazing intro, and yes, we connected through QPR presentation. You're always in the community, and you were there with. I think you may have had some people with you actually, and so it was just I've been blessed since I met you. Let me just say that, and to understand and to learn about your work in advocacy with youth, because there are not that many of you in our community. We certainly appreciate and thank you for that.
Oh, no. Thank you. So, Esha, I got to start this out with the question that's directly in front of me. What made you, right? Because we're always talking about the situation, but what made you really get involved with suicide prevention?
Right. Well, there are a couple of reasons. One, I believe most people have either been directly or indirectly involved with suicide at some point in their lives. I certainly have been. I had a great aunt who was absolutely amazing. I absolutely adored her when I was growing up, and she suicided. She died by suicide. And about 20 years after that, her daughter also died by suicide.
Wow.
Right. And so, what was beginning to happen, though, Calvin, in our community, particularly in Detroit, we were hearing, I kept hearing these stories about people dying by their own hands, suiciding. But there was one that really stood out for me, was on social media. And it was a young lady who was involved in a relationship, and her partner died from cancer. She took her own life, but she did it in such a public display. She was on Facebook, and she was chronicling her event or her suicide. She was on Facebook Live the whole time as she was driving herself to the place that she would eventually take her own life.
Mm.
And it really just, you know, uh, spoke to me. People are in pain. And even those of us who love them and who reach out to help, sometimes we're successful and sometimes not. But we know that there are certainly signs that usually precede a person taking their own lives before that happens. So then I was offered the opportunity to train for QPR, Question, Persuade, Refer, and to partner with some other folks with which you've met along the way. And we've just been out offering this presentation as much as we can to the community to let people know that there is help.
Well, thank you again for just that, right? For taking the time to share that scenario. Esha, a lot of people don't understand, right? Because the story you just told about the aunt and then the young lady followed 20 years later. A lot of people don't understand that sometimes trauma is in the DNA, right?
Yes.
How do
Yes.
we, right? We seem to think that um, it's something we can no look, right?
Hmm.
It's something that we can possibly we can just say, overlook it. We could say, well, let's just pray for him, as if
Yes.
God started. I was listening to a speaker the other day, and we resonated on the same subject. It's as if we think, God didn't give us doctors and people for no reason, right? Like it's
Yeah.
like prayer is the answer, but it's not the only answer, right?
That's
And
right.
when
Right.
we're dealing with this, and so on my end, Esha, I've been getting inboxes from all across the country. I'll soon be writing for. I'm gonna be writing for Hype magazine, right? The Hype
Yes.
magazine. This their
Yes.
20th anniversary. So we got blessed, and so I'll be writing for Hype,
Awesome.
sharing the stories, the different pieces of work that we can do. But I've been getting inboxes, right? Right. So we get inbox, bing. It's two, bing, one, bing, three, bing, right? And I'm talking consistently, and the perspective that I come from, Esha, and it's not from us. We come from a success model, so to speak,
Sure.
right? And so
Sure.
that's why I called it smash suicide,
Yes.
right? There are some things that we can do to prevent people, children, adults, right, from dying by
Yes.
suicide. I think we're too comfortable in trauma. But with that
Definitely.
being said,
Definitely.
are there some new updates? Is there any new let's start with the signs. I think that's
Sure.
important.
Yeah. Yeah. So signs are important. You have indirect, and then you have direct. Direct, I want to kill myself. Indirect, I'm gonna start giving away things, my prized possessions, things that I like. I like PlayStation 5. I play it 12 hours a day. And then all of a sudden, I'm giving it to the kid down the street if we're talking about children. Men who are the most successful at suiciding because of the method, which is usually a gun. Um,
Fire, right?
you drive a Corvette. You love this car forever, and then all of a sudden, you give the car away. So we have to pay attention. I mean, we've had people, Calvin, during this pandemic, who have passed away, who have been very close to. We haven't really been able to mourn like we normally do. Um, Certainly, as soon as you hear a diagnosis of COVID, it's like, I tell you, I'll give you a story. My granddaughter, who is 6 years old, her mother got COVID,
Mm.
and she spent the night with us. She stayed a few days with us, and she woke up one day crying hysterically. And I said, "What's wrong, honey? What's wrong?" She said, "Is my mommy gonna die because she has COVID?" She's 6 years old, Calvin.
Hmm.
Okay, so I'm paying attention.
Right. You hit something, Isha.
Her volume left.
You hit something on your phone.
Okay, can you?
There you go. Yep.
Okay. But we have to monitor them even at that young age. I don't know if you heard about the case out of Colorado where this 9-year-old was being bullied in school, and then mom went through the whole process of reporting, and she suicided some days later.
Hmm.
And so we have to monitor children as young as age 5
Hmm.
all the way through age 80. So those are some of the signs. Isolation is very difficult for people, and we've certainly been isolated as it relates to this pandemic and trying to stay safe. So some of our elderly, another case, because I work as a nurse practitioner in a few places, but I have another case where I have a lovely person. She's 84. She calls me because she's frustrated. She can't remember how to take her insulin, and
Right.
so we walked through the steps, and she said, "You know what? I might as well just die." Because she can't leave the house. Her car is in the shop, and that whole thing. So we were just talking, and I stay in touch with her. I reached out to her daughter to make sure she's staying in touch with her. And I tell you, another good tool in this whole suicide prevention is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. I tell people to call the hotline even when they're not in a crisis, because these people that they have answering this phone 24/7 are extremely helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times, due to the stigma associated around mental health and mental health disease, people are less likely to discuss, hey, I'm depressed. I feel anxious when I go somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the other side of that, of course, is that people don't like to rely on medication for any number of reasons. So,
Mm-hmm.
but support is very important. Reaching out to just say, how are you? I mean, it's been all over the news lately with the young lady, the uh, Miss America or Miss USA, 30 years old, beautiful attorney. She
Mm-hmm.
takes her own life. The mother comes out later on and says that she had been dealing with high functioning depression. That was the first time I ever heard of that. But we know people in certain careers are more likely to suicide than others, police being the top, physicians, attorneys. So we may look at it and see, wow, that's pretty successful. You worked hard to get to where you are, and then all of a sudden. So we can't assume anything.
No, we I think we do it a disservice, right? We when we get into the situation, because what I love is you're coming from um, the woman's perspective, right? The female's perspective,
Mhm.
and I be coming from the male perspective, right? And I'm
That's
like,
an excellent point.
right, right, and so when we start sizing up the situations that like you just talked about, we have a tendency to look at things in a way that is not healthy, right? Oh, they
Sure.
was weak. We use
Sure.
that term. They was weak.
Yes.
And I think you got to be
Yes.
pretty strong to take your own life. You know what I mean?
Sure.
To die by suicide is just a whole nother dynamic. I came across, lately been researching a lot more after doing the National Black Child Development Institute, that whole show, Esha, and speaking on their 50th anniversary in Washington, D.C., I came across this term, self injury mortality, SIM,
Mm. Mm.
right?
That's a new, right,
So
right.
when I came across that, right, it put me in the mind, because I'm always saying sometimes we make suicidal decisions,
Yes.
right,
Yes.
and the suicidal decisions cost. But let's
Hmm.
let's 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 look at what that point you was just making about the elderly, and the process, the number of processes that people are going through right now. If you can enlighten us, besides the few signs that you have given,
Sure.
what are some of the things also that we should be very cautious of in our, especially in our children, because you cited the young girl, she was 9. Man, I've gotten 7, 9, 5, right? Males, boys, right? The number of girls, right? We're getting
Sure.
it. I got a call all the way from the sister Karen. She inboxed me from DC. I just got an award from them in DC, and she
Mm.
literally inboxed me because someone was going through something. And
Mhm.
in that hotline, now that point that you made about the hotline, we partnered with the hotline. We reached out to them, told them, hey, this is what we were doing when we were turning over the website, when we
Sure.
started the Smash Suicide campaign, the whole nine. And they
Yes.
were ecstatic. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They were
Yes.
very, very ecstatic. And so, I don't know if people call that number, but I know you've called it. I've called
Yes.
the
Hmm.
number, and you can't get better service, right?
You cannot. That's right.
Um,
That's
what
right.
was your experience in sharing that with others?
My experience, I had a personal experience. I worked at a local healthcare facility,
Mm-hmm.
and I was calling to give a young person some results of a sexually transmitted infection. At which point, that person said to me immediately, It's over. I don't want to be here anymore." And Calvin, it was so it really was, it was a true crisis moment for me. And so the place I was working, I said, I have to do something. And it was more than just call 911, because we know what happens when some people call 911 during a mental health crisis. They may or may not survive that call. So I'm talking to a 17-year-old female, and I could totally relate to her because I have daughters. I was too once a 17-year-old female, and she had some social challenges that she was going through. But nevertheless, this was the straw that broke the camel's back. So I left work, and I wouldn't advise people to do this, but I did leave work. She lives about 3 blocks away from me, and I was able to talk to her. But I had to use the National Suicide Prevention Hotline to help convince her that she needed to get treatment at that moment. And so this person was able to stay on the phone with me while we got to Children's Hospital, at which point Children's Hospital took over the care. And she calls me to this day. This happened last year, Calvin. And this young lady reaches out to me to this day to thank me that I was there for her. But I tell you what my employer did. My employer suspended me for a week, and then also said to me, we when we heard it was you, we just couldn't believe it was you. And I said to them, you wouldn't understand. They said they couldn't understand is what they said. I said, and you wouldn't understand. But what you better hope is that if your child is suffering the same crisis, they get a person like me that can help guide them through,
Come
and
on
so that
now.
they don't suicide. But yeah, I
That's
was
right.
suspended for that. And I ended up leaving work. But to your point, leaving that job and doing my own thing now. But to your point,
Good.
when we talk about the
Right.
elderly, especially, one of the top reasons for suicide is mental disorder, um, previous suicide attempt, alcohol and substance abuse, hopelessness, some major loss, right? Maybe we got a chronic disease diagnosis, maybe, or terminal disease, I should say, something like cancer. Perhaps a spouse passed away. So there are any number of reasons that can impact and affect our elderly. And so when we talked about, isolation, that's a big one, because no one wants to go. I had a person here today for COVID testing. She has a 95-year-old aunt, and the aunt wants to see her desperately, but she's afraid because she doesn't want to expose her to anything. So she comes to get tested and the whole thing. And so I get it. I get it. But really being there and reaching out, and that's what QPR does. And I think it's really good that way. Question, persuade, refer. We question a person. Are you feeling okay? And there's even ways to ask that question. Sometimes you can be direct, sometimes it's less direct. And then certainly you want to persuade them not to take their lives. And then, of course, refer them. So, but older people tend to plan well, right? So if they're planning something, and again, this is not 100% fail proof. It's not. Nothing is. But offering some sort of service. I explain QPR like CPR. If you're walking down the street, Calvin, and somebody just collapses in front of you, you don't just walk past like nothing happened. No, you're going to try to do something. You're going to yell for help, call 911. You're going to do something. So that is the equivalent of QPR as it relates to suicide.
So, yes, yes, yes. Remembering bringing those things back. Having three trainings with you. The first one we were at over there off of Losser, right? We were over
Yes.
Losser in the
Yes.
back. I think
Yes.
Sasha Nix.
Yes.
I work on my
God, you got a
memory.
memory out of this world.
Yeah, yeah. I work on my memory quite a bit. So and so so that was the first time, right? And
Yes.
so
Hmm.
then there were two at Rebs them off of Wyoming, right? So
Yes. Grand River, Wyoming,
Grand River, Wyoming.
12048. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I jumped on. So my fourth one I'm remembering, I jumped on a QPR Zoom. It was
Zoom.
another young lady that did it, right? Because I'm curious,
Yes.
looking and gaining, because I work with these kids.
Yes.
If anything new come out, I want to know what it is, right? I
Definitely.
flat out, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so what you just said was impactful. So we ended up partnering with CNS Healthcare. Encourage Me, I'm Young, and CNS Healthcare. So they're like 7, 8, 12 of them things all over southeastern Michigan where people can go get help, right? They can go
Yes.
in. If they're suffering, they can go in. Even if they don't have insurance, say you walk in, you don't have insurance, CNS Healthcare still will look out for you. and that is a real service.
Yes.
Kevin Fisher of NAMI. I don't know if you ever seen him speak.
No, I haven't yet.
Okay, so he's at the pancake breakfast and Esha, his
Mm.
story, right? So he runs NAMI,
Okay.
and his thing is about the same thing you talk about, the stigma.
Uh-huh.
Beating up he is big time on that.
Yes.
Everybody versus the stigma.
Yes.
That's his thing, right? And
Yes.
he's out here, him, his family, like the whole nine.
Mm.
But his story is a very powerful one, and he's the CEO of NAMI. And then
Yes.
he's going to be speaking. And I don't know if a lot of people are ready, right?
Yeah.
But the family is going to have to get ready because he's going to bring some seriousness to the conversation. Like, we need to be paying attention. Parenting is such a real thing that
Yes.
we only look for the success in certain areas and don't pay attention to those things, which is again another reason why we got involved with the 1-800 number.
Yes.
The one thing I wanted to share with you about the self-injury, self-injury mortality. Okay, so self-injury mortality is around opioids and everything else, right? So drugs, alcohol, those types of things, right? So I got into it. It's a great article published by JAMA. It's something you might want to take a look at. It was very, very powerful. I really got off into it because I had been saying sometimes we make suicidal decisions.
Sure.
Right? It's not necessarily that I'm, could be in a suicide, but
Yes.
I directly make this decision and put myself in harm's way. The other thing that, Esha, that we're talking about, so as far as our branding and going global and talking to the various people, the astonishing thing that I found that blew me away was over 800 million people a year globally die by suicide.
That's a huge number. Well, we know here in this country, 1 every 11 minutes, right, dies by suicide. So just as sure as we've been on this call right now,
Yeah.
someone has died by suicide.
Yeah. 3 people.
And not to mention, Calvin, the suicide attempts, right?
Right.
And then the people who are directly or indirectly impacted as a result, right?
Right.
Father takes their life.
Yeah.
That is the head of the house.
Yeah.
Children are still teenagers or coming into adulthood.
I'm just walked in the barbershop to go see my man.
Yeah.
And got that very story.
Yeah.
Got that very story. Dude.
Yeah.
And I was like, no way. He was like, yep.
Yeah. I know.
Dude went took his life, left
And
kids, everything.
Right. And there's this thing in the community, though, and you can help me with this, Calvin. What I don't understand is that in the Black community, and I'll say Black because I'm Black. That's what that's who I identify with. Okay. It's still very taboo. It doesn't happen. It does happen quite frequently.
Every day.
And until we can really begin to embrace that and to understand that we're not immune, then, it's going to take a lot of Calvin Manns and a lot of QPR sessions and a lot of just reaching out to say, it's okay not to be okay. That was a campaign. And we're hearing a little bit more of that now, especially since, Simone Biles and the trouble that she had during the Olympics and that whole thing. Yeah. She's on a huge platform, though. But I'm talking about the teenagers in the neighborhood, right, who are dealing with social issues. The young lady I just mentioned to you, she was thought about suicide because she was from a family of 8 that had been separated from her mother, and her siblings were living in other households. The household she lived in, there was a cousin who had been molesting her when she was from age 5 to 7, I want to say. And this cousin now was coming back around. And you know what she said to me, Calvin? She said, do you think he remembers what he did to me? I said, he absolutely does.
Yeah.
And at some point in your life, you'll be brave enough to confront him. May not be right now,
Yeah.
but this is what she's dealing with and what she's going through. But nobody in the household even recognizes that she has a problem. So
Yeah.
there are so many layers there, right? And so many things to unpack.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Which is why I want to schedule you to come on a Monday to our boss segment and speak with our parents, right? We want to set that up immediately, right? So our pancake breakfast is March 5th, but anytime that you're available on a Monday, check your schedule. We want to make sure that you come in and have this conversation with the parents about science, because a lot of parents themselves,
Yeah.
when they're in the boss, Heather is teaching them self care, things
Yes.
that they need to look for themselves.
Sure.
But I can guarantee you, when you have this conversation, it's going to tap into at least three, four of them, because they're not. We bury these thoughts
Yes.
quickly without getting proper healing. I myself. When I put up the first billboard, it was very emotional for me, and
Yes.
I don't think many of us. For me, I think it's naive for me to think that this process, but many people didn't know, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
just was thinking about it when I put it up. I said I was
Mm-hmm.
that 10-year-old who was
Mm-hmm.
grabbing my bags after my parents' divorce
Mm-hmm.
and was trying
Mm-hmm.
to run away, and my
Mm-hmm.
brothers and sisters, and I got a big family. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so it took that okay, this your last time going to that door talking about you run away. I just wanted to be with my dad. You see, and I literally took butt whippings. I went out the back door just to be with my father, right? And it didn't matter to me, right? But that's what I was comfortable with, because you got what I've learned today that I didn't know. I was kind of like my dad's favorite. So I didn't know my dad was dressing me up out of all the kids, taking me to different places, putting me in the different environments as a young kid prior to the divorce. I didn't know that. So when it occurred, I was that 10-year-old. Then it doubled back on me, Esha. When I went through my first divorce, the devil tried to creep in. I was strong then, right? The devil tried to creep in, and the devil was talking crazy to me, right? But what I've learned is I created the space for those things to come in to impact me and for me to listen to them, right? And so what I did was I jumped up behind hearing that, and I ran till I collapsed. They had to come get me out the park. I ran till I collapsed because I didn't want that thought or that feeling. And I have not had that since then. Right. And I was at that point, I was 23. I was coaching varsity basketball at the high school. I was 23, 24 years old. My dad had just died from an aneurysm. So I was right in the middle for some of the things that you talk about. I was right in the middle of those things, but I never thought about it again. And the process for me was, now the work we do is to prevent you from even having. Let's build up these kids' foundation with some encouragement, with some trustworthiness, with some honesty, with some touch, with hugs, with taking the trauma away. We give our kids too much TV and too much violence, right? And so you can't build off of that, right? And so your volume went out again, sister.
No.
Check your volume, Ish. And so in that process, that becomes a much bigger issue. So
No volume.
no volume. Your volume went out.
Yeah, that you was there for a
How
second.
about now?
Yep.
Yep.
Can you
You
hear
gotta
me?
turn. Yeah, you
Yep.
gotta turn your
Okay.
camera
I
back
can hear
around though.
you. It's a little low, but I can hear you. But Calvin, to your point, and now I lost
Turn your camera back around.
oh, I love technology. To your point, Calvin, all of these interventions, they are birthed out of an experience. Can you
Yes.
hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And before our pandemic, we had meetings here at Dale, Daughters Without Dad. And I want to say you were in on one of those meetings, maybe, maybe not. But what was interesting about those meetings was we had girls as young as 9 and women as old as 85
Yes.
with similar experiences. And when we say daughters without dads, we're saying for many number of reasons: death,
Yeah.
incarceration,
Yes.
abandonment,
Yes.
maybe unknown, and
Yes.
the impact that those things have. And
Yes.
trauma can be devastating, and it takes on all types of form. And when I
Yeah.
think about, being in a dark place, because I've been there, and thank you for sharing that, Cal, which is these are things we don't normally share. I've been in a dark place. And one thing I always go back to is that could have I have avoided some of those traumatic experiences if my father was in my life, right? And
Right.
then who knows, right? But
Right.
it made me the person who I am today, and I'm very passionate about spending time with your father and how important that is. I have 2 daughters, and they're by 2 amazing gentlemen, and they have incredible relationships with their daughters and the ones that's not their daughter. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
And it was so important to me. And so any failed relationship would have never impacted the relationship that those kids have with their dads because it's that important. So I'm only saying that to say, and I know that we're talking about suicide and those things, but those are some of the things that can have a person deal with something mentally that or not deal with it for that matter, seek help, and then they call it a permanent solution to a temporary problem. My
Right.
father has long since passed away, but he left in his legacy my oldest sister, and so I've learned so much about my father through her and spending time with her, who, by the way, I didn't get a chance to meet until after his death. So but these are some things, when you pour out, you feel better, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
but we got to have somebody we can pour out to, somebody we can
Right.
trust. Calvin, I know when I'm talking to you about something personal, and I say to you, Calvin, this is personal. I don't worry about you going out sharing it with the world,
Right.
but
Right.
I have somebody I can talk to. So I think that's important. So you being there for those children, encourage me. I'm young. They know this is a respected adult who can handle what I'm about to lay down, right?
Right.
That's important. And I had some of those mentors uh, growing up in life who I reached out to not that long ago, and I had to say to them, "I'll be 50 in July," and I met them when I was 14, and I said to them, "Had you guys not been in my life at the time that you were there, there's no telling what would happen." You know, so
Yeah.
so encourage me. I'm young. We need that, Calvin. We need it. We need positive Black male role models. Period.
Well, yeah. I think it's important, right? Because me. I'm with it all, right? I'm
Yes.
saying for me, I'm saying to our culture, to other cultures, to other people. I'm saying to men, right? I'm saying to
Yes.
men of all nationalities. I remember
Yeah.
being at the men's issue conference and talking. The very first thing I talked about was racism, and I said it's not so much that it is racism; it's the fact that you carry the practice, and therefore you have to reap from it. And so, where are you reaping at? And I pointed out to where we were reaping as men across the board. And I remember a doctor from India was sitting next to me, and he had tears in his eyes, right?
Mm,
And a lot of
mm,
men were crying. This was an
mm,
international event right here in Detroit.
mm.
I'll never forget it, and it really impacted me in a way that I understood even more so
Yeah.
that each and every father has a different fight. I'm in a group right
Yes.
now where nothing but men are
Yes.
fighting to see their
Yes.
kids. It
Yes.
is it is absolutely the most amazing thing to watch. And
Yes.
I'm watching all these men trying to figure out how to be parent, how to be get into their children's lives, the games that
Mm-hmm.
is being played with them, and
Yeah.
you and I'm talking about thousands,
Yeah.
thousands upon thousands fighting to see their kids. And for me, someone made a mistake inviting me to this group, right? But when I got in there,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a group of 40,000 men.
That wasn't
And
a mistake.
no, but
Your voice
it
needed to
was.
be there.
And when I tell you, I just been watching. I haven't said anything yet. I just been
Mm,
other than one guy. I was like, every
okay.
court has a library. Go to
Yes.
that library. If you can't afford it, go to that library and study. And you
Yes.
study every law there is that benefits you so you know how to talk to that judge. That was the only thing that I've given so far. But I'm talking about it'll
Powerful.
make you cry
Yeah.
watching these men
Yeah.
fight to see their kids. Like
Yeah.
it's and we didn't have the information in the 70s because we didn't know there wasn't no camera on it, there wasn't no groups
Sure.
for it. We didn't know how many men was going to court, going to jail, get fighting to see
Right.
their kids, trying to
Right.
be in their kids life, going under the garment. We don't know that, right?
Yeah.
But the one
Yeah.
thing, Isha, that you said that I've been saying, fatherhood is a solution. And until we understand how impactful he really
Yeah.
is, because our daughters have their in-house role model, our
Yes.
sons don't.
That's right. That's
When
right.
you
A
have
friend of mine,
go ahead.
she said to me, Calvin, that if she's afraid that if something happened to her, she doesn't worry about her daughter because she knows that her daughter's going to be okay. Someone will come and rescue her. It
Yeah,
happens. Her son is who she's worried about.
her
That if
son is who
something
she worried
happens
about.
to me,
Yeah,
I don't know what would happen to my son. And it's a scary thought.
it's a scary thought, and they got him on their hip. If you can
Yeah.
just get your son off your hip and get him right and involved with, if you can learn to trust another male
Yes.
mentor, right?
Yes.
I think the Charles Pugh thing hurt a lot of people when it comes to mentoring. A lot of people trusted that scenario, and it blew me away that you did. But for me, I just kept my head down, stayed in my lane, and
Sure.
continued to accumulate over 21,000 since 2007 youth, impacted
Wow.
68% male. And so
Yeah.
we continue, we don't ask, Isha,
Yeah.
we don't really get on. We don't knock on a lot of doors, and we're starting to knock on different doors and different processes because we understand that we have a solution, and it may not look like it's much of one to the average eye, right?
Right.
But when you see our young men become men, husbands, and fathers,
Yes.
right? I had
Yes.
already had the track record, so 37 years of work, the
Yes.
last 15 being involved with a nonprofit and getting ready to take it up another notch. I just think it's just so important that we understand how important we let society and other people attack the male and devalue him,
Yeah.
and we don't know how to get along. We don't know how to, you know, because
Well,
some people you shouldn't be with, and some
yes.
people you miss that you should have been with, and
Yes.
we because of the ideas of what you look like and how you
Mhm.
perceive
Mhm.
and you
Mhm.
being mad and of course the whole dynamic. This is why I'm asking for DNA testing, because a lot of people don't know who they're raising. They don't have an idea who the kid that they're
Sure.
raising is in their household, and that creates conflict as well.
It does. It does. And that's fair. That's fair. And if we're just being honest, um, can you ruffle some feathers by doing it? Absolutely.
Oh, for
But it
sure.
is to the benefit of the child because
Yeah,
nobody wants to find out later on, and they will, in
yeah.
some way, shape, or form,
That
that
this is
this
not my
is
child.
right.
I got so
Who
many.
who
I got so many of them
and the
stories
child shouldn't have to suffer that
at all. It's
at
tough on
all.
them when they
Yeah,
find out.
I don't. Calvin, I got a 40-something-year-old friend who another gentleman has just been tested. She's still trying to find her father. And her mother's still with us, but she's not being honest. Or maybe she just doesn't know. I shouldn't say that.
She might not know.
Maybe she really, literally doesn't know.
She might not know because I mean,
Yeah.
you get out here, and we think we being slick when we sneaky the whole nine. And
Hmm.
you done crawled into this one, crawled into this one, and crawled into
Right.
this one. Before you know it, you done crawled into five, and you look up, you're like, man, I done been with
Right.
five people.
And
Right?
I tell you what, Calvin, because you could do a whole show on sexual health.
Yeah.
Women don't even understand that sperm lives inside of the vaginal canal for 5 days. Five.
Oh yeah, we like
So
to hang
so
out.
You think, you know, I mean, I'm just saying, for 5 days. Most women don't know that, right? I
Right.
went to the bathroom. Okay. That means nothing. So I'm saying you could do a whole show on that, Calvin,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well,
But
we
but
will do
what
it.
we do with our bodies and everything else, I mean, it all contributes to, right, this thing that we're talking about. We want to live better. We want to be better, and we have to do better. And
Yeah.
it starts at home.
Yeah.
It starts in the home, right? Yeah, that's where
Yeah.
it starts, Calvin. This is a
Yes. Right.
great conversation, and I'm
Yes.
so glad you bring the hard topics
Well, thank you.
to the airwaves.
We have to have them, right? And so it's not that I'm even afraid. The process is that not many people really are gonna like you, but that's not what God gave you a mission for.
Yes,
And having these hard conversations, if we can just turn around 50 people, right? If we can turn that 50 and that 50 multiply into the next 50 and the next 50 multiplying into 200 and we
hmm,
multiply, right? And we got some
yeah,
momentum on family. Like this year is our theme of family. Pancake breakfast. It's about family. The respect
yes,
day. It's about family, right? This year we're bringing home the message about family because it's just so important that we understand how important mom and dad is. We don't
yes,
we don't we don't have a lot of things and a lot of information because society, the paternus, the government, and that
yes,
whole dynamic. I just been eating so much information when people say the government is like the father. Well, yeah, that was their intent.
yes.
um, and
That's
so
right.
what was their intent for that? Well, I can give you these things, but you're going to lose this thing, and this thing that you're
Exactly,
losing is very, very important.
exactly.
Like you were talking,
It,
I would love to walk in a room full of women, uh, Esha, and have the conversation about how important men are.
oh my
I would
goodness.
love to have this conversation for them to understand, not from an emotional standpoint, but just from a presence. The fact
Absolutely.
that what he brings to the table, his presence,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
Okay,
That's right.
his
And what women
presence.
have to figure out, and I'm sorry, Calvin, I didn't mean
Go
to cut
ahead.
you out. What women have to figure out is that dads are not second moms.
Right.
They're not.
No.
He's gonna raise his voice. He needs to.
Yeah. It's who he is.
That needs to happen. He's gonna
Yes.
have a conversation that you can't have.
Yep.
And we're different. It's a difference, right?
Yeah.
And
We're
so
teachers. We're teachers and
exactly,
disciplinary.
right?
We point
Somebody's got to
out.
discipline because guess what?
Yeah.
All throughout your life, some discipline, you're going to be confronted with discipline somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere.
You got to know
And
how to handle it.
my daughter is getting ready to explode with her child, right? So my grandson, and so we've just been talking, and I just was explaining to her. I was like, just from your circumstance, your situation,
Hmm.
you're able to pick up the phone and talk to your dad.
Yeah,
I said, do you
yeah,
realize how important that really is? You're able
hmm,
to have a conversation with your dad, be
hmm,
upset,
yeah,
get off the phone, you can hang up,
yes,
call back,
yeah.
your dad gonna answer the phone.
It's a
Um,
blessing.
it's a
Hmm.
blessing, right?
It's a blessing.
You have that in your possession.
Yes,
I'm your dad, right? You can call.
yeah,
I'm your dad. So
yeah,
Calvin Mann is your dad. I'm your dad. So you can talk. You can ask
yes,
questions, right? She
yeah,
challenges me, right? She's smart, right? And
yeah,
I'm pushing her. Put this on paper. You need to go this way. That direction
yes,
that you were headed in. I'm so grateful
yeah,
you out of the environment. Now look at the direction you headed in. She too smart, right? But
hmm,
this is what dads do. We
yeah,
don't want to see our children fail.
right,
Most
right,
fathers, right? There are some fathers and parents who get jealous of their kids, things like that. I've seen that.
hmm,
There are a
sure,
number of parents who have relations with their kids where they're, emotionally in a relationship with their child, right? This is
yeah,
my son, and my son is still in the Oedipus complex for his
yeah,
mom, where I can't do
yeah,
nothing without my mom, right?
yeah,
And then there is the everywhere you go, you got your son with you, but you don't have a
yeah,
man. Your
yeah,
son is your man, right? And then it's
yeah,
all I do for my daughter. Yeah, my daughter, she's a hooper or she's this. and you do all it. We got to get out of the extremes and
Sure.
get into what is important to family, right? And so that's why we set it up the way we set it up, Esha, to have this conversation. Like I said, I would love anytime you need me to speak. I like stipends too, so just in case y'all ever really need a
Yes,
speaker,
absolutely. No question.
right,
Listen, you are worth your
right,
gold.
right,
Seriously,
right, right,
there's
and
no question
I
about it.
can,
But that's
yes,
that's an
that's it.
excellent point that you made. Dads are so incredibly important. Women
Yes,
have to get out of the way of those relationships.
and
But I will
accept it.
also tell you
Yes,
too, Calvin, is that when you have a lot of our men, unfortunately, have not had that, so they don't have,
yes.
right? So they
Woof.
didn't have that role model, if you will, or and not saying that they can't be excellent dads because they certainly can be, but we have to get back into the business of family, and even when it doesn't work out between you and her, the kid should never have to
I
suffer
have
the
to pay.
consequences. The only time that's an issue is if
Right,
there's a safety concern. Other
right.
than that,
It
stay out of the
shouldn't
way.
be a problem. Yeah,
Shouldn't be a problem.
I'm gonna say this, and I know it's not gonna go over well, but I'm gonna say this anyway. I believe that's why it's so easy for black on black crime to occur.
Amen.
I believe that the fact is that men don't see the value of men,
That's
and
right.
because of that, they don't see him as a father. They don't see him. They
That's right.
see him as an N word, or they see him as
Yeah.
no good, or these principles that we have in the streets and these rules.
Yeah.
They
Hmm.
don't see him as he just another, right? And then they know the situation with the police, right? We're not really investigating, so we walk around and we bring that karma into our culture, and it's been
Sure.
going on for decades. And what's crazy is they'll justify 100 ways, but when my brother posted a video where Detroit is the most violent city in America, right?
Hmm.
This is at the start of 2022, and I said, it's funny that you say that. I said, it's Michigan. He said, why you say it's Michigan? I said, there's at least 7 black cities in Michigan on the murder list.
Mm.
That's not a
Right.
right. So that's
Yeah.
you can say they. I'm not from the area of they. I'm from the area
Hmm.
of we,
Hmm.
right? And I
Hmm.
think it's something that
Exactly.
we need to come to an
Yes.
understanding and fix. So I appreciate you,
No
baby.
question.
I'm
Thank you.
anytime you like I said, shoot me a couple of
I'm coming to
Mondays.
speak, Calvin. You know I didn't forget.
Yes, I know. Shoot me a couple Mondays in March
Definitely.
so you can come talk to the
Okay.
parents. We have set that up, and
I would love to.
and then if you and your family are not doing anything, I'd like to invite you out to the pancake breakfast on Saturday, March 5th. My
Okay.
treat.
Okay.
Your tickets will be
Yes,
at
send me
Bill
the
Call.
information.
Yes,
Somebody will
ma'am.
be there to represent us. Yes, for sure.
Yes.
And I'd like to just leave you with the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. That number is 800-273-8255 for your listeners. 800-273-8255, 24/7.
Yes. It is
Yeah.
up.
Thank
So
you so much.
thank
And
you.
I look
Thank you.
forward to seeing you Saturday.
Yes, ma'am. I
Thank you,
appreciate
Pat.
you. Yes,
It
ma'am.
was a
And keep
pleasure.
up the great work. Anytime you need me, call me. I appreciate you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Bye bye. So we say that we only got a few minutes left. And Isha, you're more than welcome to stick around. Okay, she logged out. And so it's amazing that this is just one of the many issues. I could have chose heart failure. I could have chose, right? Years ago we did prostate cancer. I could have chose alcoholism. Years ago I was standing in the backyard of Kwame's house, and as the mayor, we have 144 liquor stores over the maximum. Years ago, it was murder. I started encouraging me. I'm young by laying shirts with kids were getting killed. So we've taken on a number of things. This one is very impactful. Suicide is let me get a chance, right? Let me get a chance for tomorrow. Everyone can help stop suicide. Everyone can help prevent suicide, and I think we have to do that work. I think we need to be paying attention. It says something about what we're not paying attention to when kids 5 to 11 are number one. we're not paying attention to something when that is occurring. We're not talking. We don't spend no moments, right? Those days go by. I know my kids, they tired of me. I'm shooting videos. I'm shooting everything I can to them to continue a positive message in their life so they'll know that that's the case. That I am here, right? It's difficult, and I share this. It's very difficult when you're in a separate household and your kids are in another household. It's very, very difficult. It goes on and it goes on, and it happens when they get into their adulthood. It's still there. That, you know, as much as I co-parented and worked, it's there. I have to live with that. They have to live with that, and I get it, right? Because it's life. But the one thing that they can't say, because I wrestle with it, sometimes I think, man, you know, I'm not there enough. You know, that's the thing in my head. So I'm always in contact. You know, I start my day out. It's a text message. It's a phone call. It's a text message. It's a video. They're part of my morning routine. It's important. I don't want my kids to have to think, and it's the same thing for my mentees. I was having a conversation with my mentees yesterday, and I isolated one of them, and I told him, I was like, it ain't about love, because you know I love you. It's not about love, right? You know I love you, right? He was like, yeah. Okay, so we know this is not about love. So you got that. You need a hug? And he's looking, he's like, no, I got a bunch of hugs earlier. But did you get a hug from a male? From me? Do you want this hug? He was like, no, okay, well, here's what I need from you. Now, I asked you all the things you needed. Is there anything you need from me? No, okay, here's what I need from you. I need you to be a leader. I need you not to be the one we're always talking to. I need you to be a leader. You've been in the program. You know the game. I need you to focus up and be a leader. I just think it's important, right? You're not as emotional as you used to be. So now you got this new game. So let's take away this new game, the antics, and telling yourself, well, you know, I'm fidgety. You know, I'm really that's what they tell you. I've seen you. I've seen you focus. I know what you look like. I know you're capable of being focused and doing the work and carving out this time for these 2-3 hours we're together and getting the maximum out of this. Okay, so now this is what I want you to do. I want you to go take the middle. Now you are going to run the rest of this session. Now you're the leader. You're running this session. What do you want to do? So he picked what he wanted to do. Okay, now you pick the teams. Okay, now you're picking the teams. Now I don't want to hear nothing but encouraging words from everybody. And you have to make sure that everybody is using the encouraging words during this process. And you got to be the one that's leading your team and talking and saying good things about your team that during this time. If you can't do that, then we're going to get on this baseline and eat some of this wood. So he say, no, I can do that. Okay. So we go through the process, pick the team. Everything works out smooth. He did some things that I wouldn't have did, but everything worked out smooth. He was lit when he left, right? You like to be involved with foolishness. The system has a plan for you. Your parents have a different plan for you. You might want to find out what kind of plan your parents is praying for. As a child, I think I need to be, what are you praying? And as a parent, I need to translate that information. Here's what I'm praying for you. What I think you should be. The things that are natural to you. I'm so proud of you. Right? Here you go. You can do that. This is not difficult. We got to get out of our way with the procrastination, because procrastination is a lack of energy. That's all it is. You get afraid. Right? And so you procrastinate because you're afraid you just might can do it. So culturally, publicly, globally, the message will resonate with anybody if you understand what we're talking about, especially when it comes to this suicide. You can smash suicide. You can smash suicide easy with encouragement. The number one way to raise a child is encouragement. I need you to understand that. I need the world to understand. Get involved with your children. Once you have a child, your stuff is on postpone. If you think you can do both and then you think that's not going to affect the child, we got it wrong. And I'm telling you from experience, I'm going to keep beating this message, Brother Bud. The number one thing we have to do, everyone, you can do more than anything because we're humans. You must put your family first. Teach, guide, direct, hug, touch. Let them go to bed with our I love you message. Let them wake up with our I love you message. Let them wake up with a routine that incorporates you saying something good. Let's get our children in a better place and get them off these poor diets where their brains are not working. I'll be here all day, Bug, if you let me talk. Anyway, that's the show. My name is Calvin T. Mann. Please put your family first. Peace.